worked as a regular pizza delivery driver during my later years of high school. Because of school, I'd always worked the night shifts on Friday and Saturday. It was a pretty laid-back job, and for the most part, I'd just be driving or standing in the shop taking orders on the phone. A couple of my friends worked there too, so I always had someone to talk to. Anyways, it was Friday night, and I'd just gotten back from my last break. The place closes at 1 a.m., so we usually stop accepting orders around 12, as we still have the clean and everything before we leave. It was 11:30, but I figured I'd get a head start on the cleaning just to pass the time. Me and my other two friends were the only ones working that night, and one was finishing up a delivery, and the other just went on break after I got back. A couple minutes into cleaning, the phone started ringing, so I picked it up and asked how I could help them. There was an older man on the line, and he asked if we were still open for deliveries. I told him yeah, but we aren't taking any large orders. They said that was okay and asked for a regular pizza and gave me the address to deliver it to. About 15 minutes later, the pizza was ready, and I boxed it up and got in my car. The address was a little more than 10 minutes away, and I was probably halfway there when I pulled up behind another car stopped at a stop sign on an empty road. I waited for a few seconds, looking around to see why he was stopped for so long. Then I honked my horn gently, assuming that he'd just fallen asleep or something. The car still didn't move, so I started to pull around him, but of course, just as I did that, he pressed on the gas and jolted forward down the road. I was a little bit annoyed, but I figured it was just some guy being a dick for fun, so I continued down the road. But a couple minutes later, I passed that same car pulled over on the side of the road with its headlights off. I got a really uncomfortable feeling passing them, like something didn't feel right about it. I checked my mirrors for the rest of the way to the house to make sure he wasn't trying to follow me. Finally, I turned down the address's long driveway that went between a forest of trees. I pulled up to the front of the house and put the car in park. Then I made sure I had everything and went up and knocked on the door. I waited a minute or two, and then an old lady answered and asked me what I was doing. I told her I was delivering the pizza here and recited the address to her that I was given. She said that nobody here ordered a pizza, and I could tell she felt bad for me. I just thanked her and went back to my car. This wasn't the most uncommon thing that happened, as some people would do it as a prank or just give the wrong address on accident. I figured I'd get out of the lady's driveway, then call my friend to have them call the number back and confirm the address. So I started making my way out of the driveway, but as I was making my way down, bright headlights blinded my view from ahead of me. It was so bright I knew it had to be a car coming towards me, so I quickly pressed on the brakes. I waited for the car to turn off the lights or turn their car around, but after waiting for a little bit, I figured they weren't going to move. I wasn't sure exactly what to do, as I could barely see, and I knew the driveway was thin, so there was no way I could get around them. I decided to just wait and see what they do first, as I didn't really have any other options. A whole minute went by of both of us just sitting there before they turned their lights completely off. I waited for my eyes to readjust to the darkness, then looked ahead to see where their car was, but I couldn't see it. I put the car back in drive and slowly began making my way down, being cautious in case the other car started coming down the driveway again. A few seconds later, I see the car with all its headlights off, parked in the middle of the path. I recognized it as the same one that was parked at the stop sign. I guess he'd followed me without me noticing. I couldn't see through the windows in the dark, so as I sat there, I started to get pretty anxious and worried that there could be multiple people in there with bad intentions. Then the front driver door opened and a man got out and began making his way towards me. Halfway to my car, he stopped and began waving at me as if he wanted me to pull up next to him. At this point, if I said that I wasn't really starting to freak out, it would be a lie. I tried my best to pretend to be calm though and rolled the car next to him. To my surprise, when I pulled up, he didn't say anything to me, didn't even look at me as he started walking around my car and eventually stopped right behind me by the trunk of my car. I looked at my rear-view mirror trying to figure out what he was doing and why he was just standing there. A few moments go by as I'm looking at this man when I suddenly come to a realization and turn my head around to the front. The other 3 doors of the car swing open and 3 more men start sprinting towards my car. My adrenaline started pumping and I stomped on the gas, flooring it and almost hitting one of the men as I turned my car off the driveway. I swerved around their car, nearly hitting several trees before making it back onto the path and eventually out onto the main road. There was nobody else on the road at this time, so I could clearly see in my mirror when the car pulled out onto the road and started making its way towards me. I figured they weren't going to stop unless I could get somewhere that wasn't so isolated, but after 30 seconds, the men turned down a side road. I made it back to work and immediately told my friends what happened. They both convinced me to call the police to at least report it, even though I wasn't able to give much helpful information. An officer came down and I gave an official statement on the incident, and then they left just before we closed. I was surprised to get a call the next day saying that 3 of the men had been arrested after attempting to rob another car later that night in the same exact driveway that I was in. The men were caught when the lady called the police after having 2 more people try and deliver food to her that she didn't order. I guess they were using that driveway to lure delivery drivers in and rob them on the way out, since it was a narrow, isolated driveway surrounded by forest. Unfortunately, though, the 4th man was able to run through the trees and make it out, and I never received any updates on him in the following days, so I'm not sure if he was ever found. The old lady said, though, that she was unaware and had never seen them in the driveway before that night. It's pretty crazy that this happened to me, but I'm also proud of myself for how quickly I reacted and was able to make it out unharmed. It definitely made my job more stressful though, and soon after I was able to change my shifts to only working during the day on the weekends. I really hope that last guy got caught though, because who knows how many more people could be in those horrifying situations due to his escape. I worked as a food delivery driver during my first few years of college. Mainly, I would drive for DoorDash or Uber Eats. I didn't like making small talk with strangers and didn't want random people in my car, so I preferred delivering food over being a normal Uber driver. I did this for a year with pretty much no issues, aside from the occasional customer mad that the restaurant messed up their order. Anyways, it was late Wednesday night and I didn't have any classes in the morning, so I decided to make an extra few bucks and deliver for a little bit. I did 4 or 5 quick orders and ended up about 20 minutes from my dorm. It was about 1 a.m. now, and I figured I should probably end it there and head back. The way the apps works is pretty much you just drive around and wait for a random order to pop up, and then it'll give you an estimate of how much you'll make and how far it is. Then you either accept or decline it. On my way back, I left the app running just in case there was a really quick delivery nearby. I got a few requests, but they were a bit too far and didn't seem worth it to me. But then another one popped up just as I was pulling into my dorm. It was 12 miles away, but the payout was really big. I'd never seen anyone offer that much money before. I gave it some thought, as it was pretty far, but it was too much money to pass up. I accepted the offer and started the directions to the restaurant. But a few minutes later, I arrived and pulled up their order so I can make sure I picked up the right stuff. As I walked through the doors, I noticed the customer had only ordered 2 items and the total was only over $6. This was really unusual, as typically the high-paying orders are because of large deliveries of expensive food. This meant that they were just giving me a really big tip. I got the food and went back to the car. During the drive there, I was really just trying to understand why they would give such a big tip for such a small order. It was a little weird, but honestly, I just came to the conclusion that it was either just a mistake or they were trying to be kind. Although 12 miles wasn't too far from my campus, I'd actually never been to this area. It was really nice, with mostly gated-off neighborhood communities and huge houses. Luckily, their house wasn't gated, and I was able to just pull into the neighborhood. I looked at the homes as I passed by and realized that the tip money made a lot more sense now. The street was long though, and I was just a couple minutes from the house when the customer sent me a text through the app. They told me to make sure I delivered the food to the right address when I pulled up. I figured maybe the map showed his neighbor's house or something, so when I arrived, I sent him a text with a description of the house and asked if that was the right one. He replied, "No," and I waited for a little bit, expecting him to describe his house for me, but he never did. But I sent him another text describing his neighbor's house, to which he replied, "No," again. I was starting to get pretty annoyed with this guy and tried calling him instead, but he refused to answer. It would ring a few times and then he'd decline the call. I looked at the address again, then copy and pasted it into Google to try and look it up there. Doing this, I actually noticed that the number for the address wasn't a regular number. It had a subset of numbers on it. I'd never seen this before and wasn't even sure what it meant.